I'm Jeremy from Pinkhorns, and this is why you should care about springs and suspension. So I'm going to walk you through, just real quick, stuff that comes with your side-by-side that you should maybe set up. Most people don't, but most people don't understand what they do. So we're going to talk a little bit about side-by-side suspension. So most of the base side-by-sides that come on the market actually come with a little bit of adjustment. This is a shock off of my older Wildcat machine that just had the basic stuff, but let's talk about what they do. Two main things that really you want to be playing around with on your side-by-side if you care at all, which is preload. Preload is the adjustment of your spring. So how much tension are we going to put on that spring is just going to determine the ride. So how the machine stance is actually going to sit when you have it loaded before that the spring can do its thing. And the other thing we'll talk about real quick is dampening. I won't go on rebound too much because that just kind of complicates things. But it's simple once you start playing around with it. So the main thing that you want to know is, how do you ride? I ride very aggressive. I like a quick turn in of a machine, and I like to be able to get on the throttle and kick the tail out. So I'm gonna let you know how to adjust it for me. Essentially, what I want is I want the front of my machine to be stiff, and I want the back of my machine to be loose. And the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna keep a heavy preload in the front, and we're gonna leave a little bit in the back so that it can absorb those bumps and stay squatted, keep the nose high. Then the other thing is the dampening. So what is dampening? What does it do? On certain shocks, you can adjust the low speed and the high speed dampening. And then on shocks like this, it's kind of like an in-between. It's gonna adjust both at the same time. So your high speed dampening, that is the chop. That's the last minute bump that you're gonna get. All that stuff that's gonna happen that with the terrain has to do with your high speed dampening. Your low speed has to do with your handling. So when I'm cornering and I'm loading up the suspension and that shock is just moving slower to set up the chassis, that has to do with the slow compression, not the fast one. So how do I set it up? I keep the front stiff. So I want it, even the high speed and the low speed, I want it stiff. And then the back end, I'm actually gonna turn it down loose to as much as it can handle without bottoming out. If ever you bottom out your suspension, you've gotta tighten it up, or else that transfers to the frame and you can break all kinds of stuff. So essentially what I do is the front is nice and stiff, the back is nice and loose, and then that's how we play around with it. So if you have your machine, kind of read the book on how to adjust the suspension and go and set the front end much stiffer than factory, and the back end kind of leave it alone, drive it around like that, and usually you could loosen up the back and it's gonna keep your nose nice and high, and when you're gonna go for a turn in, you got a lot of pressure on those tires to really bite and grab you in the corner, but the back is nice and loose, so it'll float over everything and just keep a nice weight transfer. And if you don't like to ride aggressive and you don't want to do any of this stuff, then don't listen to me. Go ride your side-by-side the way it is. It doesn't really matter because you're just putting around anyways. You suck. Why would you buy a sports side-by-side and go slow? That's just dumb. Yeah. So if you buy a side-by-side that does not have suspension adjustment, that's because you bought something that's not sporty. It's not fun to drive. The machine behind me, the dampening's actually electric, and it does all kinds of cool doodads. If I jump in the air, it goes stiff. If I corner, it does that side stiff. If I brake, it does the front stiff. So that does it all electronically, which is really cool. And you don't have to get out and adjust it. Except for preload, you should adjust for preload. And the machine I have behind me is the XP Pro 4 Ultimate from Polaris, which replaced my old machine, which this came from. It's not gonna get used again. It's a nice ornament. And that's why you should care about the suspension on your UTV or side-by-side. Go out in your garage, adjust it, play with it, go have some fun. Then like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff so that we're happy, and we'll keep doing these videos for you, maybe.